I want to talk about the pros and cons of piracy. I'm talking about internet piracy, not, army or those guys out in Somalia who are frankly quite scary. So, I say pros and cons because I don't feel like it's all negative. Even for the developers, the production studios, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to piracy, music, games, movies, whatever. I talk more about games than anything else, so I'll go in the games direction, but it definitely applies to those other areas of media. So, or art, media, art, whatever. So, why or how could piracy help game developers and companies that make video games? Well, because of a few assertions I'm going to make that may or may not be true, but they're definitely true from my subjective experience. So, people that pirate games, and the couple times I've pirated games in the past, have been primarily because I couldn't afford the game, so I equate that to other people, them not being able to afford the game, or there being a lot of options to choose from. There being a lot of options to choose from at one time, and you wanting to know, you wanted to make the best purchase possible. You don't want to spend your money on a game that you're going to play for 8 hours and then be done with, when you could have bought a different game that's going to last for a very long time. So piracy helps in this regard. If me and my gaming buddies are all talking about, the new hits coming up, the new hits are coming out, there could be, 2 or 3 games that are all coming out in a relatively short time span. And we're talking about, are we going to get this game, or are we going to get that game? What game are you going to get? This is what I'm thinking. This is what the reviewers say. And not to knock any reviewers or publications, but man, most of that stuff is biased as hell. A lot of it not inaccurate, because reviews are generally subjective, right? Like, I think a game's good, you think a game's bad, but you very rarely see AAA titles get bad reviews. And you got to kind of ask yourself, well, like, I definitely think that this game that got rated 9 out of 10 is way better than this game that got rated 9 out of 10. So why are they both getting the same rating across the board? There's discrepancies there, is the point. So there's discrepancies in reviews, and we need a reliable source of information about what are we going to like for our money? What am I going to like for my money, right? And unfortunately, if you are on a low budget, students, just generally people without a lot of extra cash to throw around on these extra video games, they need another option. Now, demos, first of all, not all games do demos, and second, a lot of the times demos can be misleading, very misleading. Of course, there's betas too, but for a lot of games, it's like, good luck getting into the beta, right? So anyway, I'm going way off point. So how can piracy help not just me, the consumer, make an informed decision? How can it help the actual game developers? Well, if I pirate a game and it turns out to be crap, of course I'm going to tell my gaming buddies, and that hurts the gaming industry, right? But at the same time, it's tough love. It actually helps a little bit, because game companies should not be able to get away with putting out crap titles. They shouldn't be able to get away. I'm talking about these big studios, not the independent guys, that are pouring their heart and soul into their work. I'm not saying that, big companies don't put a lot of passion into their work. I'm just saying a lot of games are subpar, and they get away with branding. They sell you a name, they sell you, a company, and you think, well, this company always makes good games, I'm going to buy this game from this company. But that's not necessarily the truth. And consumers need a way to kind of decide that sort of thing. So if I play the game and I say it's crap, then I'm going to tell my friends that, and they're not going to buy the game. Or maybe they'll come over to my house to check it out before they buy their game and make their own decision. On the same token, even if I never buy the game and it turns out to be really good, well, I'm still going to talk about the game. I'm going to talk about it with my other gaming friends. When you really enjoy a game, whether you bought it or downloaded it, you're still going to want to talk about it a lot. So people are just messaging me left and right today, which never happens, by the way. Never happens. Just only right now when I'm talking about piracy. So that is good press. That is good press for the game. So let's go back. Now, the reason I pirated in the first place was because I either couldn't afford the game or I had to make an educated choice between several games. Okay? Now, if the latter is the case, well, I find I really like this game, I'm probably going to go buy it because it makes it so much easier to play the game. Okay? Pirating games, it's really difficult to get updates. Obviously, no multiplayer. There's just a lot of negative things about the game. I don't get it on my Steam account to show my friends, like, look at all the cool achieves that make my EP like this freaking big. I don't get all that stuff from a pirated game. And if it's a good game that I'm going to spend a lot of time playing, it's definitely worth the purchase, even on a low budget. But let's talk about the former that I listed earlier. If I couldn't afford the game at all, even if I can't afford the game, well, guess what? That means that no matter how good that game is, I'm never going to give my money to that company. I'm never going to. Not for that game. I don't have the money for it. Now, if I pirate the game and I like the game, like let's just use a pretty popular series, right? Like let's say I pirated Morrowind, right? Back years and years ago, probably before there were pirating. Nah, there's always been pirates. Okay, so let's say I pirated Morrowind, and when Morrowind came out, I was like in high school. I was wasting all my money on, and I pirated Morrowind. Well, then the next game in the series comes out, Oblivion. Well, maybe when Oblivion comes out, I do have that $60, which, as it so happens, I did when Oblivion came out, and I bought Oblivion. Fast forward to Skyrim, I was standing in line at midnight to buy Skyrim the day the game came out because I knew it was going to be a good game. Now, I didn't pirate Morrowind, but I mean, that's just a technicality in my example. I very well could have pirated Morrowind or borrowed it from a friend. That was before, DRMs and stuff like that. So it was very easy to pass games back and forth between friends. And what that company's done by allowing me to pirate the game was ensure that I purchased the next game in the series. Even more recently, right? Like, let's say I pirated Far Cry 3. Well, Far Cry 3 is an amazing game, even if it does have PC port issues. So that means that even if I can't afford Far Cry 3 right now, because I pirated the game, number one, I'm going to tell my friends about it and how good of a game I think it is to them. And two, when Far Cry 4 comes out, I'm most likely going to blind purchase it without ever playing it, without reading any reviews, because as long as they don't, stray too far from the concept behind Far Cry 3, I know it's going to be a good game. So piracy can really help in those ways. Now, you could argue, well, it costs the game developers and the publishers and all that and the distributors money because there are people that pirate for other reasons. You're saying the only two reasons you would ever pirate are because you can't afford it or because you need to test out multiple games at the same time that you can't afford. And so the counter argument to that is there are people out there with plenty of money to pirate the games that just do it out of spite or just because they're greedy. Well, to be honest, I just disagree with that. And I guess if you push that matter, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. But basically, people that make that argument are people that don't have a lot of money. Because a person that has a lot of money, they usually don't scrimp too much on their hobby. And when it comes to a game like the games I've listed, the Elder Scrolls series or the Far Cry series, these are games that you're not just going to play for one day and delete. These are games that you're going to play for a long time, and you're really going to get your money's worth. And people generally don't scrimp on things like that. And when it comes to video games anyway, if you have a lot of money, the price of a video game is very negligible. $40, $50, $60. I mean, that's how much you spend going out one night. And a lot of times it's like half as much as you spend going out for one night. So, I mean, Okay, I'm done talking about that argument. I just think it's stupid. So what are some of the cons of piracy? Because so far all I've been talking about is good things from piracy, right? Like, nothing bad can lead from piracy. Well, to be honest, I have kind of a hard time coming up with cons. Now, if I accepted the argument that people will download the game for free even though they can afford it, if I accept that argument, which I don't, but if I did, then I could see the cons, right? Well, this guy's just going to pirate, all these people are going to pirate the game instead of actually buying it, and that hurts our sales. Except games are selling more than ever now, right? More people are buying PC games than ever before. And if you think it's hard to pirate games, it's never been easier to download a pirated game. And they come out really quick. There's several competing groups, or maybe it's one person. I don't know anything about the scene, but I mean, the pirated copies of the game come out so quickly that you're not even missing much playtime by waiting for the pirated copy. Let's talk about another con of piracy. It's brought about this always online DRM and various forms of DRM. Now, the only form of DRM that's been able to like really fight piracy at any level is the always online. Except, excuse me, except that people find ways to get around that too. The most recent example I can think of is the Heart of the Swarm beta. I didn't download the illegal version, but I had a friend who did, and they set up makeshift servers that allow you to connect and allow you to play. No big deal. No big deal. StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm sold 1.4 million copies. Are you going to argue that it would have sold more if there was no piracy, no online piracy in the world? Maybe. Maybe, but I doubt it. So I'm trying to think of some cons of piracy here, really. I mean, if we'd see the sales of music, movies, and games steadily decrease as pirating technology became better and better, it'd be easy to argue, except, I mean, we're talking about billion-dollar companies that are increasing revenue. We're not talking about, companies going bankrupt. This isn't like, Washington Mutual. This isn't like Chevrolet going bankrupt. You say, you think people stealing cars is the reason Chevrolet went bankrupt? Hell no, right? Here's getting too long to mess with. So, so it's kind of funny. We make all this big deal about piracy. Or, we don't, but every now and then, there's an article about it, or, anytime there's some always online DRM crap, then they bring it up. But the fact is that the gaming industry is doing really well. So is the music industry. And so is overall the entertainment industry. Which can only tell me that piracy doesn't actually hurt. And what's the big deal? I don't know. Maybe somebody can tell me.